Okay. Right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the second of our Social Farms and Gardens webinars. I'm Sophie, and I have, I'm just going to check you can hear me. Yeah, I've worked for Social Farms and Gardens for about 5 years now. And this series of webinars that we've put together is really in response to obviously what's happening at the moment all around the world, and what we're hearing from a lot of you working on the ground. And we undertook a survey of our members, and one of the really big kind of standout findings from that was that very few projects had actually closed altogether. So I think it was only about 13% of members reported having completely closed, and that meant that lots and lots of people were having to very rapidly adapt and change what they were doing on the ground, and how they worked with people, and that was a big area that people wanted to find out more about. So we've been putting together a series of webinars, and the one today, if I can get my PowerPoint to work, maybe. Yes, is on adapting working practices. So I'm not going to talk too much. I'm just going to kind of do a bit of housekeeping, and then I'm going to hand over to Chris and Jeff, who have very kindly joined us, and I will let them introduce themselves when they come to speak. So, general webinar housekeeping. So just so that you know, all attendees, which is all of you, when you come through, you are muted and your video is off. So that means that it's a bit weird for us because we can't see or hear you, but we believe that you are there. So if you need to communicate with me, because I'm going to be doing the kind of admin whilst the guys are speaking, if you could use the Q&A function that will be in the Zoom control bar and send me a question through that. So if you're having any technical problems, please just use that to sort of flag with me. Please use the chat function as well to sort of speak to each other, or to post useful resources or links that kind of you might think of like during the conversation you just want to flag up for people. But because today there's just me that's doing the kind of behind the scenes stuff, if I can just say, if you want to speak to me, send a question and then I'll definitely see that. If stuff, I mean, we will have time for questions after both people have spoken. So if you've got questions, then by all means sort of put them to us then, and I will sort of read them out. Or you can kind of put them in as they come to you, as they're speaking, and I'll kind of collate them, yeah, and then sort of put them to the guys at the end. We are also recording the webinar, just so that you know, and we will put it on our YouTube channel next week. So if you drop out for any reason, or you think somebody else could benefit from seeing this, then next week it will be available online, so you can see that. And if your internet goes down or anything and you just get kicked out unexpectedly, I hope you don't, then you will be able to rejoin. Just use the link that was sent to you in the email and you should then be able to get back in. So today's session is really, as I said, just about hearing from a few people on the ground about how they've changed their working practices in light of kind of COVID-19 and social distancing and the requirements there. So I'm going to hand over to Chris first of all. So Chris is from the Kindling Trust and from Woodbank Community Food Hub. And Chris, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. So Chris is going to speak for about kind of 10 minutes, and then I'm going to hand over to Jeff, and then we'll have time for questions and a bit of a discussion after that. Thanks.
Thanks. Yes, so my name's Chris. I am a co-founder and a director and worker for the Kindling Trust. I don't actually work at, or haven't worked at our Woodbank Community food site, but since the lockdown I've been there a couple of days a week, and I've been really fortunate in that my work before the lockdown has been put on hold. So there's been a couple of us who have been able to really focus on kind of our activities at Woodbank. And I've been asked to talk about the very practical things that have been going on, the very practical things that changes we've made at Woodbank. But before I do, I want to just let you know about the assumptions that we've made about this lockdown, and give you a bit of an understanding of the site itself, and then talk very practically about the processes and systems and guidance that we put in place. When the lockdown happened, we pretty much closed the site for a week and spent a lot of time thinking and planning and talking to a lot of people. And we came out with a range of assumptions. And our assumptions, and we'll see how good these have been, is that this lockdown period is going to go on for 6 months. And we assumed that it was going to go on until September. And no real kind of radical changes were going to happen to the guidance. So we kind of built a lot of our procedures around, okay, it's for this 6-month period, and we don't need to try and second guess what the government are going to be doing. We're just assuming that this is going to pretty much stay this way. That we would look to reopen the site from September onwards at the end of our growing season, which again has really helped us plan. That there'll be significant changes to food and farming and the retail sector coming out of the lockdown. That the lockdown will probably be tougher than going into the lockdown, particularly with people no longer being furloughed and the like. That whatever we do, we need to prepare for the fact that this might happen again. That we need to increase security on our site. And that really we won't start any of our major community programs until the spring of next year. So we kind of closed the site, had a big think, made some assumptions, and then 2 big things came out of it for us. We wanted to come out of it as a stronger organisation and a different organisation. We felt that if we just made these changes to deal with the lockdown and stayed the same as an organisation, same structures, same systems, same ways of trading, that actually it would be really tough coming out of lockdown and would just create a lot of problems for us and our volunteers in the future. So we're taking this opportunity, if that can be a word, to kind of look at everything and evolve over the coming months. We developed a plan for the site, and I'll talk a little bit about the site in a minute, but the plan had 4 purposes. That was to greatly increase food production on the site, make more of our food more accessible to local residents, to keep local residents informed about what was going on in the site, and to respond to the situation well and demonstrate that local food systems can provide resilient solutions for the future. So that's kind of the context. I'm just going to show you some photos of the site just to give you an idea of what we're talking about. It's a couple of acres. It's an old council nursery, and yeah, it's kind of this kind of thing. Before the lockdown, we had maybe 20-30 people on the site each day, but we were also very dependent on large groups of people joining us on at weekends. So the challenges we faced are, we were going into a new growing season. It was a time of year where we were very dependent on volunteers, and obviously it's a community resource that we don't want to just close to local residents. So that's kind of the rationale for our development and the site. The site is an interesting one in that there are 3 or 4 kind of key activities on the site. So on one hand, we do social prescribing, and we have a community garden, and people come onto site with carers. That side of things has completely stopped for now. And we have, and at the other end of the spectrum, we have commercial growing on the site, and we run various training programs. So what we've been looking at doing is, after the week and a half or so where we closed, we've looked at how we could reopen the site to as many people as possible. And 5 weeks in, now we have quite a lot of volunteers who are coming in and helping with the commercial growing. We have a number of local residents back on the site, but we're not looking at restarting our social prescribing for at least until September. So in terms of systems and the very practical side of things, we sent an email to all our volunteers and we asked if they were going to be furloughed and whether they had opportunities to help us. And we set really strict criteria for volunteers who would be invited back onto the site. And we took those that guidance from others like Organically and stuff. So the things that we were asking people if they were going to consider volunteering with us was whether they could travel to the site safely, that they weren't volunteering with other organisations, that they weren't living with people who were shielding or self-isolating, that they weren't key workers or living with key workers, that they were happy to be self-sufficient on the site, bringing their own packed lunch and food and the like, that they were able to stick quite rigidly to the procedures and systems that we had put in place, and that they would be very happy to work in a very kind of task-focused way. So we sent that invite out to a lot of people, and obviously we got a lot of people coming back saying they were really keen. And then the next thing we did was we set out really clearly what people would be expected to do when they came onto the site. So we offered slots, and we were offering a day's slot from 10 till 4, and you would be coming onto the site and you'd know well in advance of what you were doing. And you would come onto the site, and the first thing you would do is wash your hands, and you would put your gloves on, and you would pretty much stay away from others who were on the site. So in that first week and a half when we were closed, we took the opportunity to set up new wash stations, hand washing areas, tool cleaning areas. We have, although we have a brilliant site, the cabin was identified as one of the real problem areas for us. It was quite small, only 2 doors, and we took the decision that there was only one person in that small cabin at any one time. So we ummed and ahed about whether we were going to get portable toilets onto the site. We decided against that, but we looked at kind of bottlenecks around the site and set up workstations and hand washing areas and storage areas for people's equipment throughout the site, dotted around the site. So this is just, you know, really simple stuff. You know, lots of sanitizer, lots of hot water. These regularly get hand sanitized. Yeah, people come onto the site, they know which hand washing station they're using, they know where their chair is, they know where they're storing their gear, their lunch and stuff like that. What we have been blessed with is good weather. I'm not sure how we would have coped if it was really bad weather, to be honest. We had looked at and we have cleared areas in the back of each of the polytunnels for this, but yeah, so far it's worked out well weather-wise. And we have a lot of tool washing stations. So people are sent the week before their task sheet. The task sheet states really clearly what tasks they're carrying out. The site, we spent a lot of time labelling the site up, labelling beds and the like. People come onto the site, they wash their hands, their wheelbarrow, which is numbered, is ready waiting for them. Throughout the day, they're asked to wash tools down, sanitize handles and the like, carry out a task, and they're checked on every couple of hours to see how the tasks are going. And yeah, this is what we've been doing. So again, over this period of time, it's for the last 4 or 5 weeks, it's been really simple for us because we've been preparing beds. So it's the sheets are really easy for people to follow. You know, they're numbered. It sets out how many wheelbarrows of compost goes on each bed, which bed compost goes on, where the compost is coming from, all that kind of stuff. And then at the end of the day, we get a report from them about how well it's gone. What we do right at the start of each day is just set the site up really well and just keep it really clear and tidy. I mean, the site has never looked so organised, to be honest, and that's just to stop people having to kind of bump into each other and the like. We are spending a lot of time communicating within the team about tasks and how tasks are getting done. And after a while, we've got a real kind of feel for, how fast someone can be, how easy and quickly it is to do a bed, what are the best tools for those beds. So we've kind of been evolving it as we've gone along. We found that we recently did a survey with all our volunteers. They're super happy about the communications that we are providing them with and the guidance. And we keep saying to them that all we're trying to do is create a site where you feel comfortable saying if someone is getting too close to you, or you see someone not sticking to the rules. And we're just trying to create a site really that each person we found has kind of their own level of kind of need in terms of kind of hygiene and safety and distance and stuff. So we're just creating a site where people feel that they can be really kind of honest with us about how they feel. The other two areas of communication, so for us, we've broken it down into 3 areas of communication. Communicating with volunteers, which seems to be going really well. Communicating with people walking past the site, and communicating with internally, so organising our days. So we spend a lot of time now organising. The team speak each day at the end of the day, just checking on how well the tasks have gone and what tasks need to be done the next day. We spent more and more time informing the council of our activities, and that was particularly important at the start for us. We were very conscious that other activities, community activities going on in Stockport had been stopped, and there was a lot of talk of local authorities kind of stopping people going on into community buildings and assets. So we were really clear with the council that we'd put in really robust systems. We informed the local police that was going on. We've been really strict about social media, so none of our volunteers are allowed to take photos on site. If there are photos being taken by us and put on social media, we're making sure that a photograph taken at the wrong angle doesn't make it look as if we're all congregating around a TN and the like. And we've made it really clear that people are working really safely. So we spend a lot of time thinking about keeping distances from other people. So people aren't allowed to work more than 2 beds. You've got to be at least 2 beds apart. This is probably the closest people are allowed to get, and they start at either ends of beds. So lots of that kind of thinking and planning really. And one thing that's been important to us is communicating with local residents, because a lot of the community activities have stopped on site, and we just want to communicate with people in a positive way. We found the initial documents and signage and stuff we were putting together in some ways was alarmist and could have been regarded as mildly patronizing. So we've spent a lot of time thinking about, people coming onto site need to be reassured. We don't need to add to people's anxiety. Actually, there are some positive things coming out of this. But what we didn't want to do is see local residents walking past a site that is, closed to them, but other people are kind of growing their own food and doing all right out of it. So we're spending a lot of time kind of communicating this. And then in the last week or 2, we have kind of started selling more produce. So obviously it's a terrible year for us. We don't have anything really coming off the fields just yet. I mean, we just harvested our first Monge 2 beetroot probably next week, but we haven't got that much produce at the moment. And that's been one thing that we've wanted to communicate with people. This food isn't being made here and then being sent somewhere else. This food isn't being grown here and sold to some restaurant in town. It's that time of year when we don't have produce, but it is a time of year when we're most busy. So we have now started selling produce from the site, but obviously lots of social distancing going on. Yeah, and just making more effort to tell people what's going on the site. And we're also a collection point for veg bags, so we're just installing more capacity, because obviously there's a big demand for local produce. So we just put these sheds in the other day so people can come onto the site, pick up their veg bags, and feel safe whilst they're doing it. So yeah, that's kind of it really for us. We spent some time thinking about it. We didn't rush into anything. We felt that we wanted to use this as an opportunity to kind of evolve the organisation and be somewhere stronger for local residents at the end of the lockdown. Our systems and procedures, it's just all about us being more organised, I feel, us communicating more within the team. And yeah, we've put a lot of thought into kind of how we're communicating what we're doing on site to local residents and the local authority.
Great. Thanks, Chris. That was really good. I've got lots of questions for you. Definitely people interested to know, and I know we'd spoken about this, about basically who you decided to allow back onto the site, but who not to. So I know you took a decision to close your social prescribing program, and why it is that you took that decision.
Yeah. So we took that decision because that we felt that doing activities outside, and there's still a conversation about whether outside is a polytunnel or not. The outside activities we could do really safely. The cabin is really limited for us. Small kitchen, 2 toilets next to each other, short small corridors and stuff. So the decision was made that any activity that was dependent on that cabin would stop. And we have been very strict on the whole social distancing. So we have said across the board, we can't have people on the site who aren't able to adhere to the guidance. I mean, none of us can stick to the guidance like all the time. Like over the last week or two, that we're having to remind ourselves of what 2 meters is like and stuff like that. So but as time goes on, we've had invited more and more kind of local residents back onto the site. So this weekend, I think there's going to be maybe 12 people on site, but each person has their own space.
And do you have a maximum number of people that you allow on site, or anything like that?
We look at it and it's based on tasks, to be honest. We found that because some tasks need people to be close to each other, and there are some volunteers, we've got a group of 4 people who live together, and they are just brilliant because they can work together. Like if we need any plastic folding, we give them that job. So yeah, no limit, just based on tasks.
Okay, and somebody else asked whether you allow children on site?
No. So we had a really amazing community program lined up for the year, and a lot of that activity was aimed at under 16s, but all of that has stopped.
Okay. Somebody else asked whether your site is organic?
Yes, it is organic. That's why I need lots of volunteers to weed at the moment.
Yeah. Somebody had asked about gloves, so just specifically about them. Do people bring their own gloves? Do they have their own assigned pair of gloves? Are they disposable? Are they reusable? Tell me about your gloves.
Yeah, sorry. So when we went out to recruit, we were asking people to commit to either once a week or once a fortnight. We sit them down and we do like a good half-hour induction. We run through everything. They watch manual handling videos. They tick all the documents to say that they understand almost every line of our guidance. We provide people with 2 pairs of gloves if they're coming every fortnight. I think it's 4 pairs if they're coming every week. They sign those. so they're theirs. We also give people masks. We've been giving everyone masks. And some volunteers who are coming every week, basically all their tools are set aside in one place in a numbered wheelbarrow.
Okay.
Yeah, but just garden gloves.
Great. And you mentioned the loo in the cabin. So is that literally like a one in, one out system for the toilet? And is there like a what system have you got there basically?
Yeah, so a cabin is there's an entrance and there's a fire exit, and the cabin consists of a kitchen, meeting area, 2 toilets, and an office. So all of that is pretty much out of bounds, except for one person at a time. So we stagger the lunches, and yeah, we basically have a sign on the fire exit door. We have and ahed about whether we have a one-way system, but no, we've just had one in, one out. It hasn't caused any problems yet. What we traditionally do with our volunteers is we all have lunch together, we all have tea breaks together, toilet breaks together. Now volunteers are really just left. We just check on them, make sure they're drinking lots of water, that they're having breaks. And because of the layout of the site, it's really easy to see when someone's in the cabin, or if someone's gone to have lunch and stuff like that. It's a really open site, so people are kind of policing that themselves.
Okay, and is there like a cleaning rota or anything like that in terms of kind of cleaning spaces?
Yes, lots of checklists. So when we get in the morning, or we hand sanitize all of the door handles, toilets, all the tools. And throughout the day, the wash stations are sanitized again. And at the end of the day, everyone's responsible for sanitizing their tools. I mean, yeah, I mean, social distancing is much more important. It seems like we ask people to wear gloves anyway. I mean, there's so much crap around the site. Pigeons are crapping, badgers are crapping. Like we ask people to keep gloves on all the time anyway, and wash their hands quite regularly. So yeah.
Okay, and so in terms of using the loo, is it like do you ask people to kind of clean surfaces after they've used it or anything like that?
Yeah, so there's sprays in there.
Okay.
Yeah. And then
Great.
we just go in every couple of hours or so.
Okay, and then you shared a picture earlier of the hand wash station. The water from that, where does that go? Somebody's asked. Does it like down the drain or?
No, it just goes out on the field.
Okay.
Haven't thought about that. Maybe I need to.
Okay. Okay. Last couple of questions. People are just asking about the kind of the communication basically you've had with volunteers in terms of like the updated task sheets. Yeah, and just whether any of that we would be able to share.
Yeah, definitely. So we give everyone a task sheet every week that sets out the tasks, all the numbers of the beds, and a map on the back of that. That's really good, and we get that back at the end of the day, so that all gets logged. That we give them a guide to the do's and don'ts on the site, and there's and we've changed our next of kin form as well, and there's also it's probably not so relevant now, but there's a covering letter to state that they're a key worker if they get stopped by police.
Okay, all right. Well,
documents.
Yeah, so you and I can have a chat afterwards, and if there's stuff that you're happy to share, I can send that out to people afterwards. Just in terms of the time slots, did you say that your day was 10 till 4, but are people able to book slots within that?
No, it's 10 till 4. Well, there's 10 minutes kind of between like 9:30 and 10:30. There are slots that people are coming in. So if someone's new, it takes a good half an hour to do the induction with them at least. If someone's been coming quite regularly, it's just making sure that people don't bump into each other at the gate. The whole site is locked. So yeah.
Okay. Brilliant. Thanks for that, Chris. That was really interesting. Yeah, sorry to bombard you immediately with questions. That's all that have come through so far. So if it's okay, I'm going to pass over to Jeff to hear from him, and then there may well be more questions at the end.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to mute Chris and unmute Jeff. So I think Jeff's going to have quite a different set of experiences. So Jeff, I don't know if you want to just introduce yourself and basically tell us a little bit about Pathways and then what your experience has been and what steps you've had to take over the last few weeks.
Sure. Is this coming across all right? Am I loud enough? Yeah, great. Yeah, Pathways Care Farm is we're a care farm, so we're not like a social garden. We've got 13 acres, so we can socially isolate quite easily. Not all of that is productive use. We've got some fields set apart for growing hay, and we've got quite a lot of pasture for animals. So we have animals and we grow vegetables. Our clientele are people from different walks. We have people living with mental ill health, people who have learning difficulties, so quite a few with autism, OCD. We have people with dementia. We also do some work with ex-offenders, but that's stopped for now. When the lockdown happened, we found that we had to, basically a lot of our people are vulnerable, so a number of them are shielded, so they couldn't come anyway. And a number of our volunteers are also in that category. So a lot of our volunteers are older people. I'm hardly a spring chicken, as you can see. But we have a number of volunteers who are older, who are retired and have their own health issues. So we decided that we were going to close down the whole thing for our clientele, as it were. But we still had to look after animals. The vegetables still needed growing and the site needed maintaining. Otherwise, when we took it over, it had been derelict for 20 years. So we took over this site 6 years ago and it was literally brambles everywhere. And if we leave it for another year without tending it, it will be brambles again. So we have to tend the land. So we've got it's an amazing site. Really beautiful, and we're trying to keep it that way. As Chris said, I don't think the site has ever looked so nice because we've got time to be out there, taking our time with the animals, actually getting to know. I hand fed a couple of alpacas this morning. I haven't done that for months because I just had time to stay there with them. So everything's a bit more leisurely, which is really nice, and I hope actually some of that sticks because it would be nice to. I think we're all learning lessons from this procedure that we're going through. So the immediate problem, we had a number of things. We had to look after the site, we had to look after the animals. So we had a core crew of people. Either we've got a couple of staff who look after the vegetables. We've got a number of volunteers who are very good with helping on the vegetable side of things and the flowers. So we grow a lot of flowers as well. And that carried on really with about 2-3 people each day. And they don't have to come in every day. Some come in twice a week, some come in 4 days a week. So that's really up to them when they come in, as long as the work is getting done and things are progressing nicely. In terms of the animals, obviously they have to be fed and mucked out and looked after constantly. So we have a feeding rota. We've got a number of, I wrote to all the volunteers and staff and asked who was interested in coming in. And we have 2 to 3 people per day. So my day starts at 8:15, mucking out the donkeys, and other people come in and they feed the goats and they feed the pig and they feed the alpacas and all that kind of thing. So we do the feeding jobs, and that's usually over by around about 10:30, depending on how much mucking out of pens we have to do. And often then in the middle of the day, we'll then have a break. So that then we'll come back in the afternoon and carry on feeding, where the people growing stuff tend to stay there all day. So we haven't had our farm workers, we call them, coming in. But the other big issue, the reason that we're there in the first place, the reason that we're a care farm, is not to look after animals and grow vegetables. It's actually to look after people. And all those people are vulnerable. So one of the main things that we worked out very early on, everyone's aware of it, is people's mental situation. So for me, I just had a telephone bill in, which was huge compared to the normal one, and I was trying to work out why it was so high. But of course, I've been phoning everybody once, twice a week, 3 times a week for some people. And so I've been phoning, or I've got lists of all the vulnerable volunteers and the farm workers. So working through that list and making sure that people are okay, that they've got some kind of connection. Some of them are really isolated. They're just 80 years old with dementia and with prostate cancer, can't get out the house, sees a carer twice a week, and that's it. So, and then I thought, actually, what can I do? We're talking about different practices. I've come from a graphic design background, so I started to make videos. And I've been doing, not quite daily, they started off as daily and now every 2 to 3 days. But I've probably done 20 or more now. And I send out these short, between 5 and 10 minute videos, which are different aspects of the farm. So I've done an up close with the goats and up close with the donkeys, mucking out the donkeys, a tour. I've just finished a 3-part series on a tour around the farm. So literally just walking around the farm, talking about different aspects of the farm. We've got the hay being cut tonight, so I'm going to go up there and video that and do a production on the whole hay production thing. So there'll be a video on that. So I set up a YouTube channel and started putting these up there. We have 50 farm workers a week, so we have 10 people a day. And usually around about 10 volunteers on site. So we have around about 20 people on site at any one time on normal days. At the moment, we're down to about 4 or 5 on site at present. So I started sending these videos round to about 40 people on the list who had email addresses. And I've now got a subscription of nearly 500 because people have just started. I think what's happening is everyone wants a bit of a good news story. So looking at cuddly goats and nice donkeys on screen, it's become a little bit of a thing, And I also know that 1 or 2 of our people, because of the lockdown and because of sickness, they've ended up in care homes, because we do a lot with people with dementia. And I know that in a couple of care homes, the person that I'm sending the link to, they're putting it up on the screen and they're all sitting around and watching it on the big telly. So it's reaching more people, which is a really nice thing. So telephones, emails, texts, videos, all that kind of stuff became our regular day rather than the normal day of having people on site and working alongside them. And then what happened, I saw an article by William and Kate about mental health, and it was really backing up what we've been saying. So I got in touch with our local authority, Suffolk County Council, who own the land that we're on. And I said, we've got a minibus that is about 12 feet long. We can socially isolate. Could we pick up 1 person a day so that they're more than 2 meters away and bring them to the farm where they can work in isolation, but they can see somebody, they can be out in the open air. And I thought they'd say no, but they didn't. They said yes. So for the last 3 weeks, we've had 1 person per day coming and helping us work on the farm. These are our regular clients who are coming in now 1 day a week. We're now talking to the council. They've asked me to start thinking about gearing up for the next step. If Boris says next Friday that we're not going back into lockdown and we're going to ease the things again, then we will probably go up to 2 or 3 people per day. But all the things that Chris was talking about, cleanliness, hygiene, social distancing, we're not having a one-way system, but we're looking at markings on the floor to remind everybody of what 2 meters is. So just putting bits of tape down to say that's 2 meters. You don't have to stand behind the line, but that's 2 meters. We've got outside toilets, a toilet block with outside loo, so that works okay. We've got rotas for cleaning, and we're asking everybody to clean after use. the tools, I really like the idea of everybody having their own set of tools. So I've made a note of that, and we're going to adopt that now. Great idea. Gloves, yes, everybody has their own gloves. We ask people to bring their own. We have got some that we can provide if they haven't got theirs for any reason. Obviously, you don't share gloves. We've got masks as well. Because of the distancing, we tend not to use masks very much, but you would if you're mucking out, something like that. So it's generally those kind of things. The other practice that we're looking at, we've used the time to plan. Time seems to be so precious, and we're all very busy, and you end up sort of getting to the end of a month or the end of a season, you don't quite understand where it's gone. So we've actually used this time to have lots of discussions about, do we really want to carry on in the way we've been doing it? It's working, it's great, but are there improvements we can make? We spend a lot of time looking after animals, but actually we've proved that now we can get all the animals fed in about an hour, hour and a half. So how about if we just come in early, we feed the animals, but then people can muck out, they can do that, that's fine. They can poo pick, but actually let's try and get more people doing horticulture, because that's the bit that they're going to be able to take home. Not many people have got an alpaca in their garden that they can look after, but everybody can grow some tomatoes on their windowsill. So let's teach more people the horticulture. Some people we've already been doing that with, but we're trying to gear it up to say, no, this is an area where we want to do more in that area, and have more of an emphasis on horticulture. So that's been we think, a positive change going forward. So yeah, I mean, it's been, we've done a lot of group work in the past. We're now going to be looking at more teaching people to be more independent, so they don't have to have someone on their shoulder helping them. It's more difficult with dementia, much more difficult, and with certain aspects of learning difficulties. So the kind of people that we have in are much more vulnerable, and it's more difficult than saying, can you go and do that job? Because within a minute and a half, they've forgotten what you've asked them to do. So, but with dementia, you have to be there to remind people to go to the toilet, to remind them to pull their trousers up sometimes. But that's one of the joys of working with people with dementia, and getting them out in the open air is really, really good, and can help maintain their balance in their life that they don't have. So we want to carry on doing that, but we have to be able to be a bit closer to people who have dementia. So that's one of our challenges going forward. But so it's not very prescriptive, but I learned a lot from listening to Chris, actually. It's great. So if there's any questions, that's sort of as formal as I can get, really. I was going to show some pictures, sorry. Let me show you. Can you see that? Is that shared?
No, you need to share.
No, I need to share the screen. I've got to go back to Zoom. Where's Zoom gone?
You lost us.
I've lost Zoom. Let me go back to, hang on.
Just while you find that, Jeff, actually, and Chris, if you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself, I've had a couple of questions on things like first aid. So I don't know if you would just want to say whether you have like trained first aiders on site, and whether that dictates which volunteers you allow to take part or not, and also if there's any guidance on like cleaning tools. Is there a set like process for cleaning the tools?
We have trained first aiders. We try to have 2, if not 3, on site at any one time. We also really try to promote safe practice, so you don't want accidents. They do happen, but normally they're quite small. Our animals are very, very well behaved, so we've had hardly any incidents with animals kicking or biting. But the worst things are little thorns that you get, or you might find a bit of broken glass in the soil that you're turning over, those kind of things, splinters. So yeah, we've got trained first aiders. It hasn't restricted who we get on site. We allow anybody to come in, but we try to always be looking out for safe practice. And then tools, we haven't done enough of that yet because we've had staff and volunteers who know what they're doing working. But now we're talking about coming back, then that's going to become part of our risk assessment, that you clean up at the end of the day and how you clean up. So I'd be interested to hear what Chris says about that. He's obviously more skilled at that side of it.
We have first aiders on site. No, we haven't done anything different. We've put a lot more first aid kits around the site that are accessible to everyone. You know, most of the polytunnels, and all the first aiders have masks. So no, haven't really that hasn't really changed.
Has there been any change in the guidance for the first aid, as someone's just asked? So, for example, someone falls over and can't get up because of social distancing. Do you go and help them up? You know, is that something that has been raised yet? I hadn't thought about it.
We just had PPE, so we would say help them up, and unless there's a very good reason. And we are very, very fortunate in Suffolk. I don't want to sound blasé, but there are very few cases down in Suffolk. And so we're relatively safe. I'm not saying that, you know, certainly not blasé about it, but I think if an older person fell over, the last thing you want to do is leave them down on the ground, particularly if it's uncomfortable or other things might happen. So we would suggest picking them up. If you can get two people to help pick up, then actually you're both side by side. You're not looking somebody in the face, that kind of thing. That's practice that we would try and do. So.
Yeah, and tool washing. I mean, you know, there are these numbers about how long a virus will survive on different materials and the like. I think it's just a case of we just regularly sanitize them at the end of the day, at the start of the day. People don't share tools, so we leaving them out in the sun, making sure everything dries. But I think there's very little evidence that is, you know, a significant way that the virus is spread.
Yeah.
Chris, I know that you have had people be unwell on your site, and that's not been an issue in terms of like spreading and things like that.
No, so as there's a lot of different organisations who share our site, and one organisation has had quite a few people get the virus, and it hasn't been passed on to other people or other groups. So for us, that's kind of a kind of acknowledgement that kind of the systems we've got in place work. But yeah, I think the Northwest is there's quite a bit of it about, but as you know, as we keep saying to everyone, we just want to create a site where you feel comfortable saying things, and also we just want, all we can do is just be better than what's going outside of our fence and gate. You know, like our park is so busy at the moment. You know, it's difficult to socially distance getting into our site. You know, if you're coming at lunchtime, particularly with the sunshine at the moment. So we're just saying, look, we just need to all feel comfortable about bringing these things up and just being better than what's going on outside the site. And I think that's all we can do. I think if we overthink it or try and, you know, get ahead of the science, we're just not going to do the things that we need to do. And as Jeff said, you know, there's all this social anxiety and all these other things that come with that. So,
yeah. Okay. Jeff, I'm aware that we interrupted you whilst you were looking for your photos, so I do have some more questions to ask, but I didn't know whether you wanted to share those.
I'll show a half a minute of a video.
Okay. Oh, great. Thank you.
This is a video that it's not working. Why is the video not running? This is Flora, our pig. There you go. So this is a video I did. I've just done a series on a tour around the farm. And you can see we've got the polytunnels, the market garden over there. We've got paddocks.
Is the donkey paddock. That's quite a lot.
So that's just a very quick. Am I back? That's. I've just done a whole series on all sorts of things, and it goes around the site, and people can send me requests. I started doing plugs for people's birthdays and things. It's just a way of keeping people connected. So.
Brilliant, thank you. And same question for you, Jeff, as to Chris. People asking if you allow children on site currently. We
don't have children. Our regular work is done with over 17s, but we do, when we're not in lockdown, we have work parties once a month where we allow families and anybody to come to the site. We do have organised trips, so we have primary schools, we've had Girl Guide groups, we've had family wellbeing days, that kind of thing, where people can come to the site and we'll have a tour around. So that way, but that's an organised tour rather than just coming on the site to work. And so we are a closed site in terms of we have open gates, but we don't allow people just to come wandering in and stuff like that. We do have a stall just on the outside of our gates where we put our veg for people to come and take with an honesty box if people want to put a donation in. It's actually been, I think people are more generous that way actually, but that's a good way of us helping to distribute some of the produce that we're making. Okay, great. And I know, Chris, you mentioned polytunnels, and Jeff, I think you have them as well. Do you have any particular arrangements for people working in polytunnels? People have asked.
For us, now they have to be completely open, the vents up, all the doors open. And I think we're just now doing social distancing thing. I think we're now just doing 2 meters. Okay. Yeah, it's similar for us. We obviously the weather is so nice that a lot of the stuff is happening outside now, which is great. The soil's getting warmer. So, but I heard Chris make a comment about the debate about whether polytunnels are inside or outside. We've kind of come to the conclusion that they are both, but actually for the purposes of the virus, we're almost treating them as indoors. So we're having fewer people. If we don't, ours are a decent size, but we don't want more than 3 people in a polytunnel at any one time. So we wouldn't want, in the winter, it can be really hard. Everyone wants to go in there. You can have 10, 15 people in a polytunnel, and that's fine if you haven't got a virus floating around. Yeah, absolutely. So there's not any specific, like people have to wear masks in the polytunnel or anything like that. There's not specific PPE requirements. It's just sort of social distancing and then limiting the number of people in that space at any one time. Yep. Okay, great. And the mask that you, sorry, Chris, go on. Oh, just because we're also asking people to, because we've been fortunate in that the volunteers who are coming on site aren't having much contact with other people the way they're getting to the site. You know, that also limits. So there are things that we can do on site, but also we're fortunate in that the people who are coming onto the site aren't being perhaps as exposed to the virus as maybe other people would be as well. But that, I know we're really fortunate on that.
Okay, and then just specific question around masks. What type you both have on site?
Yeah, so we got a local group to make them for us. Mm-hmm. So ours aren't anything, you know, they aren't to a particular standard. And we've got some others that are to a standard, but I think they're just for first aiders from what I remember. But yeah, nothing special.
We were fortunate. A lot of the care facilities within Suffolk have been given a supply of stuff from Suffolk County Council. So we've got disposable gloves, sanitizer, aprons. We haven't used the aprons at all. Bags to dispose with things with, and we've got masks which are sort of layered and with little pinch things for the nose. The problem seems to be that you have to tie them up at the back, which is quite difficult, particularly for people with difficulties. So you end up having to get a bit close to someone to tie them up for them. Kind of goes against what you're doing, but they're apparently good masks. But we not everyone uses them. 1 or 2 people use them, usually people that are more vulnerable than anyone else.
Yeah, we were giving the masks out in case there was a situation where you did have to get close to someone. But that, I can't think of an instance where that has happened. But also we were thinking about if people were required or felt comfortable or wanted to wear them on their way to the site. And then because everyone's got them, then people can ask someone to put one on.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, hardly anyone's wearing them.
It does seem to be very much a personal choice, you know, even down to sort of staff that I see in the supermarket. Know that no staff all have the same thing. It's up to them to choose, and then it's the social distancing that needs to be kind of rigorously enforced.
Yeah.
I think we're all watching Donald Trump to see what he thinks next.
God. We're not getting into Donald Trump on this webinar. He's banned.
Sorry, just one thing I've remembered that I didn't, which is really important to us. Like when we do the induction and we talk about how people have got to the site and who they're living with and all these other things, something that has become quite clear to us is that actually people communicating with us after the fact is as important. So we, you know, if you go away and you become ill, you know, we really need people to let us know what's happened after they've left us. And when we wrote the guidance, it became really clear that, you know, that the emphasis was what was going on before they came to the site. And actually it's as important to know that, you know, 2 days later they went down with a cold or, you know, they're feeling unwell. So I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's part of the document that you use for your induction, is it, that you just make that clear to stay in touch?
Yeah, and everyone's kind of signed these and initial them and stuff like that.
Okay, brilliant. And I know lots of people have been asking whether they can see those.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. In terms of crop distribution, so somebody's asking about how you plan to distribute your crops for both of you, whether that will change this year in light of what's happening.
Yeah, so we have collection point. So we do a range of things, but it's basically veg is kind of put in a bag, and we have customers who are coming onto the site. So that's changed. So people can just come and pick their bags up. So that's happening. We've started this store, and we had bigger plans for a bigger store, and you know, even that kind of, you know, selling a lot more produce. That's kind of on hold at the moment. We social prescribers, we're actually delivering veg bags now every week. One of the team is taking veg bags to people's houses. It's still early in the season for us, so we haven't kind of worked through the exact systems of how we kind of make our food more accessible, but we're fortunate in that we're in a park, so you know, we have a lot of people passing by.
Yeah, we have the stall by the gates, and the local population come. We're right on the edge of town, and in fact, a lot of people come to us on the way to Tesco, so they can get veg straight out the ground rather than having to buy their stuff. So that usually goes quite well. The veg stall is always empty, so we top it up in the season when, like Chris said, it's early on yet. It's been mostly rhubarb and some leeks, but we're now starting to get into other things. We've got chickens as well laying some eggs, so we're putting those out. Yeah, it's that goes really well. During the season, we could be topping that up twice a day. We did have outlets for our produce before. I don't think that's going to happen now. We were talking to the local authority about delivering to veg boxes to their offices and having a regular group of people wanting to take it. That's probably on hold for now. But I think we'll see how long it goes on for. But we are also thinking about having a sales outlet on the site, depending on what happens with the lockdown and whether we can open up a bit more.
Okay, thanks. There's a question around, are you differentiating between people coming on site who have travelled to you on public transport? Is that sort of a requirement or not requirement?
We use the minibus. So rather than if people have got their own transport, then they come on their own. Some people come on a bike, some people come in a car, some people walk. But if people can't do that, then we've been picking people up in the minibus because it's quite big and we can spread out. So that's how it's worked. On small numbers, we can do that.
Okay.
We were looking at other people's advice, guidance, and some were saying that they weren't accepting volunteers who are travelling by public transport, and we didn't feel too comfortable about that. So we kind of watered that down a bit. Most of our volunteers either live nearby, cycle, or come in a car. We don't rule people out because they've come by public transport.
Okay, great, thank you. And then just a bit of a change of tact. Somebody's been asking, which I think is a really great question, about how we as projects can continue to build a sense of community, I suppose, when we are so distant. So I don't know if either of you have kind of thoughts on how you've been doing that. I know, Jeff, you've talked about your videos already.
I think the videos is really been my answer to that, and it's like I said, we've got 50 farm workers and I'm reaching 500 at the moment. So I think the community has grown, and it'll be interesting to see what happens after lockdown, whether we have more people wanting me to carry on doing that because they're feeling connected to the farm. So
yeah, I think when we've looked at this strategically, we've talked about strengthening our community rather than growing our community, and it definitely feels much stronger and much more resilient. There's a lot more ownership of things. So yeah, yeah. Once we know what coming out of lockdown is or looks like and how it's going to happen, I think that's when the conversations need to happen. But we've started having conversations about the opportunities coming out of lockdown, but it's a bit of a guessing game.
Yeah, I've certainly had conversations about how this is highlighting how key organisations like yours are to kind of creating resilient communities that can withstand shocks like the one we're in at the moment.
Yeah.
Go on.
So I also think there is an element of solidarity as well. I think we're working with some organisations we wouldn't have worked with in the past, and focus on people who are sheltering, people who are kind of self-isolating, people who are key workers. So kind of solidarity within the food sector to strengthen is also something that's important to us.
Just to get back into the nitty-gritty quickly, somebody's asked if you could just briefly go over where your social prescribing clients have come from, like how they come to you.
Well, we've run a couple of pilots and they've been run with local GP surgeries. We will hope, I think this is our second year now, maybe third year. We had hoped by now that we were commissioned by the NHS, and that there were more GP surgeries who were kind of formally referring people to us. That hasn't happened yet for a whole range of reasons, and we could talk about that for hours. So we're getting referrals from a lot of different places. A lot of carers are coming to us. People are coming through community projects and the like. So a mix. Okay,
brilliant. That is all of the questions that have been submitted answered, which is amazing. And we're just over an hour now. So I am going to start wrapping up. I just want to say thank you to both Chris and Jeff, because I think at the moment there's so much that we're having to learn and adapt very, very, very quickly. So I personally think it's really quite brave to come on and talk about the changes that you've made, because we're all just sort of learning as we go on. So I'm really grateful for you both sharing your experiences and understanding that we're all learning as we go here.
Thank you.
No, it's good. Yes, somebody saying it's not just us struggling with social prescribing then. No, definitely not. Definitely not.
No.
If anybody's interested in my views on social prescribing, they can get in touch with me later. It's a far bigger subject than this.
It is. It's perhaps it's for a whole nother webinar. So on that note, actually, I'm just going to take control of the screen, use all that power as a host, and share my screen again. Okay, so I just wanted to highlight, can everyone see that?
No.
Oh, I have not pressed the right button.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight the few more webinars that we have coming up, and we've really scheduled all of these, trying to respond as much as possible to the requests that we're getting through from the survey answers. Thank you to everybody that's filled that out. It is still live if you want to do it. And yeah, one of the big questions coming through was around funding, and lots of people understandably have lost their main sources of income at the moment, and it's a very worrying time. So we're running a few different sessions on funding. We ran one yesterday on putting together budgets and cash flow forecasts, and all of the webinars that we do will then go onto our YouTube channel once I know how to upload to that. So don't look at it yet because they're not on there. So there's a few coming up. Those a lottery funding officer, so yeah, please join us for those if you're able, to enable you guys to support each other as much as possible. So we have relaunched the Social Farms and Gardens Facebook group. So that's a place for members to be able to chat and share ideas and resources, but also ask for help on particular subjects. So maybe like what's going on with social prescribing would be a good one. Yeah, and we're also considering running slightly more kind of social video sessions through that group. So there's a poll there. If you go to that page, you'll see there's a poll there asking whether people would be interested in doing that. So we're really trying to find ways to help people help each other, because I think now more than ever we kind of need the strength in our network. And like Chris said, a lot of it is about solidarity. So those are all my slides. I think we've answered everyone's questions. Wonderful. So please do keep in touch in the ways that I've listed. Thanks again to Chris and Jeff. It's been really interesting hearing what's going on your sites. And that's it. I'm going to end the webinar. Thanks very much, everybody.